migration is coming, and the future is Asian. This is according to a migration expert and master in his field, Dr. Parag Khanna. And
that just sounds like a threat, doesn't it?
It does. I don't know how much we can say on this topic without being shot in the head by YouTube, so we might have to tread carefully on this one. But I'm going to read what he wrote. So, this is an article in the Herald Scotland, and it is mostly centred on Scotland in its framing because, it's a Scottish paper. But the actual argument applies not only to Scotland, but to every country on Earth.
I'm sorry, just before we actually go any further into the article, that top paragraph there, scroll down, just that top paragraph. Scotland, with its liberalism. Scotland's liberalism.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about Scottish liberalism, especially while the SNP is still in charge.
Yeah. There's a mistake I've noticed already, is all.
Yeah, but they say in here, the future for Scotland, like the rest of the Western world, I should clarify, not every country on Earth, I forgot to mention that, it's only the West that's getting this mass migration, funny that, is probably going to be Asian. The country will find itself swept up in the coming Great Migration. We will see a brownification of Scotland as demographics and mass migration coalesce to change the complexion of the West. Dr. Parag Khanna, the world's leading intellectual on migration, presents a stunning analysis of the future. To pro-immigration side of the political debate, such as Nicola Sturgeon's SNP, Khanna's claims will be well received. Others, in the populist anti-migrant camp, will be infuriated, even fearful. Khanna's comments will play directly into Scotland's increasingly fraught culture wars.
Just throw populist in there to scare the normies.
Yeah, populist, scary. And also, he's going to increase the culture wars. How's he going to do that? Well, so I mean, we were joking about this before, but me and John were just like, well, I mean, you've got like, let's say the alt-right, all the guys with the tiki torches being like, you will not replace us, and then Khanna on the other side being like, we will replace you.
Yeah.
This isn't managing a conversation. This is just like making it worse, but okay.
And at the same time denying that they ever said, oh, well, you think we'll replace you? We won't replace you, but we will replace you.
Right. Like you both want a race war.
That's just a
I don't want to be in
conspiracy theory.
Okay. Khanna, who has just brought out the celebrated new book, Move, How Mass Migration Will Reshape the World and What It Means for You, is an expert in political science, international relations, economics, geopolitics, globalization, blah, 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 blah. He's got a million words after his name. That's so I'm just going to cut all that out because it goes on forever. Khanna has also advised the US National Intelligence Council and has traveled to 150 countries researching global future trends. So what does he have to say about the future? What's it going to look like? We have always been on the move, says Khanna. Migration is a central part of humanity's long story. Since Western colonization began, migration sped up. All right, going to stop you there for a minute. I just refer you to Douglas Murray's endless speeches on this topic. People are like, oh, Britain is a country of immigrants. People have always immigrated here. Like the Huguenots. And it's like, yes, a few thousand people in 1 year, in between years and years of nothing happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just keeping it to ourselves, really.
Mass migration. I mean, the other mass migrations are the literal invasion by the Normans or by the Danes. So,
yes.
I think that's what we'll call it.
An invasion, I probably shouldn't say anymore.
Well, no, he's advocating it. So,
yeah, that's true.
In every culture since, Khanna explains, the number of migrants has increased because the number of drivers of migration have increased. In the past, some Europeans wanted to get rich in new colonies. Others fled disasters like the Irish famine. War played its part, as did the opening of America, Canada, and Australia. When it comes to the progress of migration through the centuries, says Khanna, the decimal place always moves to the right. We went from millions of migrants to tens of millions of migrants in the 18th century. By the 19th and 20th century, we've got hundreds of millions of migrants. Could just enforce the borders. That would have always solved these problems. But no.
Yeah, okay.
Today,
Just because people want to move doesn't mean they should or have the right to.
His argument is that, well, numbers go up over time, therefore it's inevitable numbers can go up.
Look at this graph.
Yes, the numbers will just go up forever. Like, they don't have to. You could just enforce the border.
This is just the migration equivalent of Malthusian economics. Number keep going up, never stop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very sad. Very sad. Go watch J-Reg's Amprint video if you haven't. It's great. Today, climate change has been added to the forces compelling migration. Throughout this century, swaths of the planet will become uninhabitable, it is predicted, displacing entire populations. Otherwise, it just seems to be a theory that is pulled out of people's ass. I'm very at a loss to find where these people make this argument other than, well, the sea levels will rise and then everyone will have to leave London. And it's like, well, sorry, we're going to wake up tomorrow and the whole thing's going to be underwater, is it?
Yeah.
No.
You'll open your window and a load of water and a mermaid will flood in.
Yeah, it's not that people will move slowly over time and then, well, their problem's fixed because we move back. No, okay, the whole world will just be underwater. It's strange, I find. In this century, says Kana, in just 20 years, climate change has already accounted for 30 to 40% of total displacement in the world. Again,
Is that true?
there's no source.
I don't think that's true.
Where's your source? Anyway, so the drivers of migration are now threefold. You've got 1/3 economic, 1/3 political, wars and persecution, and 1/3 climate change. I don't believe it. I mean, just on the people we get alone into Europe, bugger off, are they moving because of climate change? They're endlessly here because they're just like, well, I heard it was rich.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
And what a job.
Yep. Gibbs' job. Look at the Syrian drought, which led to the urbanization, political unrest, civil war, and exodus of nearly 1/4 of the population as refugees, he says. Doesn't follow at all. There was a drought, therefore Syrian civil war. I mean, if that's not reductionist, I don't know what is.
I was going to say, are they just purely putting the Syrian civil war on a drought?
No rain, let's kill each other. We could just, clean the water or import water. No, let's just kill each other. All right. Simple as. In this century, says Kana, we're talking about billions of people moving. That's what I'm trying to explain. Literally billions. Again, this is the line theory. So in the future, we'll just have billions of roaming hordes of humans just moving over the continents.
Gangs of communes moving from one place to the next.
And if that scares you, it shouldn't, because that's the future, and that's progress.
And why that's a good thing.
That's a beautiful vision of the future, as Kana will try and lay out. I don't know why. The people of Asia will dominate the coming Great Migration. Asia has more than 50% of the human population, says Kana. However, this is where it gets funny. Asian birth rates are still high, and Western birth rates are practically zero, he says. Therefore, by law of simple arithmetic, even more of the world's population will be Asian. The future is truly Asian.
That's literally Malthusian economics. Western birth rate 0, Asian birth rate high. It will never change. Nothing will ever happen to ever change that.
Nor could we ever do anything to change it.
So we just need to accept it. We just need to import them over here. Don't worry, guys. We've got plenty of space.
Could you imagine going into government acting like that? And just being like, whatever the trends are, we're going to do nothing. That's my role as the leader of the country, to do literally like whatever's going on, no matter how bad, no matter how corrupt, just leave it. Don't even repeal every legislation. Just keep the bad things going.
See, obviously in many circumstances that sounds terrible, but I can think of many circumstances where a government just going, we won't do anything, would be the absolute best solution.
Well, if the whole situation's buggered and they just say, we'll do nothing. Like, let's say all of France wants to move to the UK and the government goes,
Well, at that point, yeah, maybe the government should step in.
Because that's what he's arguing. If the populations of India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan are combined, they exceed China's population. Kana believes it is the young people from the subcontinent who will make up the mass of future migrants. Much of the subcontinent faces more climate danger than China, which higher proportion of livable areas. So he's saying here that, okay, he's saying Asians, but not those Asians.
Oh, okay.
Not the Asian Asians. They're not going to come. Right. Chinese youth is less likely to want to leave home, Kana believes. China is stable and strong. Whilst the young Chinese people might like studying in the West, not everyone wants to be a political revolutionary and live under a liberal, democratic, free society. So there we are. That's what we're left with. It's funny.
Chinese don't want to be free.
It's funny how he listed this with the future will be Asian, and you've got this idea in your head, and then he's like, no. Only Pakistan and Bangladesh.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah, had to be Pakistan, didn't it? The country which is totally worth importing more migrants from.
It's worked brilliantly so far.
No problems whatsoever. Let's have billions of them. That's the argument. Right.
There's not even billions yet. Let's just make more of them and then import them.
Pointless nation full of fundamentalists. And then the next title here in the article, Migration or Die.
Where does that come from?
Oh, it's good to know we're being threatened at least.
I was going to say, that's where the gun just gets pulled out.
Shh, take the Pakistanis or you get the bullet. Okay, Kana, please leave my room. Europe should view mass migration not just as a benefit, but a lifeline. Ah, yes, the lifeline of more fundamentalists from Pakistan. Okay. What a godsend.
We can't just encourage our own people to have more children.
No, praise be to Allah. We have been sent with billions of Pakistanis.
Great. We can become little Pakistan.
That's literally his argument. Kana believes the West's entire discussion about migration is cockeyed, he feels. We have low birth rates, aging populations, not enough workers, especially to care for our growing elderly populations, and plenty of space. Do we? me to Britain. Europe should be competing in a cutthroat manner to recruit as many smart Asians as possible, but none of the Chinese because they're not coming. Only Pakistanis. Is this who? That's my first question. Which one of them doesn't have a relationship with the Taliban? Instead, Europe has seen the rise of anti-immigrant, nationalist, and populist politics. You cannot simultaneously hold that labour shortage are becoming more acute, and also that populism remains as an inalienable force. Because the truth is that the more painful truth is that demographic and therefore fiscal circumstances will become. Sorry, I've bugging up my lines there. So he says, sorry, the labour shortages are becoming more acute and also holds that populism remains as an immutable force because the truth is that the more painful the demographic and more fiscal circumstances become, the more likely it is that populism will have to bend to economic realities. This is a weird argument. I hear this a lot. So the argument goes, there's not enough people in the country to do the menial jobs. Who will clean my toilet, Donald Trump, if you remember that.
Yes.
And therefore...
that just has so many implicit,
yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, that's just like, only Asian people will clean my toilet.
Well, it was a lady talking about Mexicans on The View, if people don't know that clip. There's some Hillary Clinton supporter who was like, well, who would clean my toilet, Donald Trump? Like,
I am very progressive. Yes.
Yeah, I too am a leftist. And so the argument goes that there won't be enough poor immigrants that we're just going to endlessly import, apparently in the billions, to, say, the UK, to do the menial jobs. And therefore this is bad because you won't be able to employ really cheap labor. This doesn't sound bad to me, and it's always bugged me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not an economist, I don't have an economics degree, but I find it weird when people talk about the uncompetitive labor force because wages are too high.
Well, I'm no Marxist, but I would say that from a economic point of view, if for the benefit of businesses keeping wages low, you decide to import a load of people from already poor countries so they can work for nothing. You know, you could make an argument that sounds like exploitation.
Sure, but think about that complaint for a second. Wages are too high. That's a complaint.
Okay.
The complaint is that the labour force is not competitive enough because the wages are too high.
Have you seen what those delivery drivers are getting paid nowadays? Far too much.
Whose interests is that individual talking of? Is he talking of the interests of the people who've got those high wages? No. He wants them cut. He wants them lower.
Yeah, and if you're worried about the idea that there's not going to be enough people to fill those positions, that's rubbish.
But his
absolute rubbish.
Part of his argument here, as laid out, is just him saying, "Yeah, you in the West, you get paid too much. I'm glad you're on my side.
You need to be as poor as we are."
Quote: We tend to default towards this view that national identity and anti-immigration postures are that persistent norm, and everything will have to hold and wait until a great enlightenment transpires. This is like the racist will suddenly disappear one day.
Yes, it's a brown future. A beige future, I think it is.
Obsession. Oh, they do use brown in here, actually. That is not the case at all. If that were true, Germany wouldn't be a mass migration country that it is today. No, Germany is the way it is because of Mama Merkel. Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
And he also just gives us the numbers. Around 1 million migrants arrive in Germany each year, and 13.7 million people are first-generation immigrants. 1% of the population each year in Germany. Remember, in 2016, I think it was like 2% because of the everyone can come policy. Just 1% of the whole population is just foreign that year alone, and first-generation immigrants being 16%. 16% of Germany is foreign-born. What happens when it reaches 20, 25, 30, 33?
At what point do we stop calling it Germany?
Questions. When does it become the Heathrow waiting lounge? Recent elections saw Germany swing to the left with an SPD Green Liberal coalition and the collapse of the hard-right anti-migrant AfD. That proves, says Kana, that populism is more bark than bite. Okay, yeah, the Germans are not recognizing their own problems, probably because they still got like German guilt, which we don't, because we defeated the Germans, unlike the Syrians who sided with them. Unless Western nations want to decline inexorably, immigration policy needs to be directed by supply and demand, not insular notions of identity. Immigration policy needs to be purely about economics, not about the people who live here, or any of their concerns, or their existence as an identity, in any form.
Once again, if you want to talk about supply and demand in terms of labour and other such things, once again, we have a decent enough population who aren't working as it is that you could just go, oh, well, if the wages go up to incentivize people to take these jobs, those people might actually be tempted to get off the dole and do something productive.
It's just the more point for me is he's saying the identity aspects, the concerns about identity and immigration are not important. So if we could import 80 million people to Germany tomorrow, to the point that the German identity ceased to exist, it became a figment of the past, like, I don't know, the Vandals or something, an ethnic group that no longer exists, that wouldn't be bad. That wouldn't be undesirable. That would, in fact, be as neutral as just, well, numbers go up, well, more good. Insane. Kana also notes that the current manifestation of populism may quite literally be short-lived. The mostly elderly, xenophobic, populist generation is heading for the big Brexit in the sky, he says. Meanwhile, anti-migrant policies are damaging Western country, he maintains. Again, a man clearly of our interest. How does he think of us? You will all die soon, and along with you, your worthless identity. This is not someone who has any interest in the people at all. He just sees what numbers go up, world more good. Be Canada. I'd rather not.
No, absolutely not.
That's the next headline. And over here, I'm going to skip over it because it's mostly him just saying that Canada is very cucked and therefore good. And no. But he then does go on to actually admit some of the realities of what he's proposing. Immigrants also, so he starts with, immigrants also pay more into the system than they take out.
No, they do not.
They fulfill social and economic services that indigenous people don't want to do, like collecting trash. Yeah. Much more time, money, and energy should be spent on integration, though, so that social balkanization doesn't lead to racial friction.
He's finally addressing some of the actual issues.
It's not racial either, you moron. You can get plenty of white people who are from one culture and move them into another country of white people, and there's going to be friction. Why? Not because of racial friction, because of ethnic friction.
I don't want 50 million French just moving in overnight.
No. Kana points to France for failing miserably on this issue. Yeah. Quote, I don't think France will ever get its S together, he says bluntly.
Oh, based.
Significantly, Islamophobia and hostility towards migrants currently dominates French politics.
Never mind.
Islamophobia currently dominates French politics. How could the French do this?
They have no reason whatsoever to feel such a way.
I can't believe France would do this. It's the French people's fault. How could they? Kana sees Germany as the European country leading the way when it comes to creating social unity between the races. Again, I don't know why he never speaks in ethnic terms. He only speaks in racial terms, which is a weird thing to do. But Britain, despite all our fears over Brexit, isn't doing too badly either when it comes to cohesion and migration. Quote, look at the number of wealthy South Asian peers in the Lords. There's no equivalent to France.
When did this article come out?
I think it was a couple of days ago.
Did they not see the recent news on a particular Asian lord?
Just no one tell them about Lord Ahmed, all right?
Oh, yeah.
Then we move on. So he then lists it brownification. Okay, this is going to get spicy, isn't it? If you literally want to be the mirror image of the neo-Nazis, go for it, but it's a weird desire. Migration means that the raciality of the world is already mongrelizing, he says. These are his words, not mine. And as the century moves forward, we'll only see more of this robust mongrelization of the world, genetic mingling that's inevitable as a result of different populations mixing in all corners of the planet. In London, Mohammed is already the most popular boy's name, Khan adds.
That's not due to, like, an integration. What is he on about?
We'll see the effects of mass migration play out over the next 30 to 50 years. We've already run this experiment in the UK.
Yeah.
And again, it's not to do with...
Everything that he's saying here is so wrong. Even if you like the joke
it's
that
so
I was
low resolution.
The joke that I was I mean even on a like microcosm, if you examine it, there's the joke that I made about it's a beige future, the idea that all the races will just end up mixing together. That's not how it works. You have two people who have a mixed race child, they go on to partner up with somebody else. If it's anything other than another mixed race person, their child will have one dominant ethnicity.
Sure, but also just the weird low resolution of endlessly focusing on race. Because the important thing of the experiments of mass migration that we have had in the last century, let's say, in Europe, is not one of race, but of culture. These cultural problems have played out across European communities intermixing and non-European communities intermixing. Sure, there is racial stuff to talk about, don't get me wrong, but it is not the primary thing of where the friction is coming from or all the rest of it. It is the weird stuff that foreigners do that is sometimes illegal.
Yeah, it's cultural.
The West will undergo brownification, Carter believes. If Asian youth represent the majority of the world youth and the majority of world migrants, they also represent the majority of future mummies and daddies. We'll see an ever higher proportion of the world's children with brown complexions and less with white complexions. You can't refute that or do anything about it. It's all part of a beautiful, deep tide of history and demographics. And this is where he just releases himself as being the mirror image of the Tiki Torchi guys.
Yeah, he sounds like a conqueror gloating.
He is not saying that, it's what it is, what it is. It's not a neutral opinion on the situation. As he says, beautiful. He sees it as beautiful that white people will become, let's say, a massive minority. And as he puts it, the brownification will take place. He thinks that is not neutral.
Well, white people were evil, don't you know?
No, it is beautiful to him. And he wants the Scottish, presumably, to become like American Indians. Like living on some kind of like
reservation
out in the sticks. You can find them out there. They don't live in any of the cities.
We stuck them all on the peaks of the Highlands.
No, they're just in the countryside. They're not in any of their capital cities or major cities. When could that happen? And then I thought we'd just point out that the fact that this is obviously just anti-white rhetoric there. The fact that he is obsessed with such a thing and calls it beautiful. And it reminded me of a clip that Bo mentioned earlier in the office, and I thought I'd play it because it's just an amazing thing to see. This is Jimmy Kimmel talking about the US Census.
Some more news. The results of the 2020 census just came out, and for the first time in American history, the number of white people went down.
Says with a smile on his face.
Wait, what?
That's your audience. You say white people went down, and they start screeching and hollering about it, as if it's good.
That's the subversion.
It's a celebration for them.
I can only hope that was created by like one of those applause signs just lighting up. But I doubt it.
To be honest, I reckon they did it spontaneously. But also, just imagine the reverse. The 2030 census, for the first time ever, the black population in the United States halved.
What?
Could you imagine that happening on daytime TV?
Absolutely not.
No. And I thought I'd also mention, because a lot of this argument plays into economics. At one point, he says Russia, the world's biggest wheat exporter, needs farmers. And Bangladesh people face rising sea levels, so why not put them together to solve the two digital problems at once? However, clearly, an anti-migrant Kremlin would never accept such an idea. And this being the argument, we'll just move everyone from Bangladesh to Russia and that will make money. Well, we have an example of this in Britain. Like, let's just get this graph up, which is, I don't know everything about economics or anything, as I've said, but the argument that lots and lots of migrants is some kind of magic bullet to make your economy amazing was just not.
No.
I mean, this is GDP per capita for the UK, and since 2008, it's down. Because, well, we've had the migration. It has not turned the economy into some, like, superstar.
I mean, once again, to address the economic argument, this is something that Douglas Murray addresses in The Strange Death of Europe in the very first chapter, talking about the counter-argument of, immigrants put more into the system than they take out. No, that's just a lie. It's based on misleading studies that look at maybe the top 1% of migrants who are the most productive, and then ignores all of the ones who just take out of the system.
Yeah. Well, I thought I'd also just end this off, because I said there's not much we can say about this without being shot in the head by YouTube, so I thought I'd understand this spicy segment off with something even more spicy.
Oh, God.
This is an op-ed in Russia today. Multiracial Britain now resembles Neapolitan ice cream, with brown at the top and gammon pink firmly at the bottom. Writes Nipal Dihwali, an Indian chap. He's the only one who could write such a headline and not be instantly sentenced with a hate crime. And so I can't read it. I'm not going to, and I disavow. However, we probably will be doing a premium podcast or hangout at some point on this subject. Yeah. So
if you want a preview, you can probably find the link down in the description.
Yeah, but that's the argument. There's the future. Apparently, we are all going to be Asian. Not Chinese, but instead Pakistani. If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to subscribe to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as this interview that Carl did a while back, but I felt like featuring again just because it was so good, which was the interview with Posey Parker, the adult human female, as is defined as woman in the dictionary, but not for much longer. If you'd like to follow Posey, you can also follow her at Getter. That is at Posey Parker on getter.com. Thank you and goodbye.